Every single day, millions of people sit on planes for short trips that waste hours of their lives. Airport, security, gate, delays, baggage claim. A 2-hour flight turns into 5 hours of your day. Gone. But right now, 2 countries are building trains that could kill short flights forever. One is building a train that floats on magnets and goes 500 kilometers per hour through tunnels. The other is building something even crazier, a train inside a giant vacuum tube that hits 1,000 kilometers per hour, faster than most planes. No airport hassle, city center to city center. This is the story of how Japan and China ended up in a race to build the trains of the future, and why the rest of the world is just watching from the sidelines. The problem with normal trains. Let me start with why we even need these crazy new trains. For almost 200 years, trains have worked the same way. Steel wheels rolling on steel tracks. It's a good system. It works, but it hits a wall. Once you try to go faster than 300 or 350 kilometers per hour, physics starts fighting back. The wheels wear out faster. The noise gets insane. The ride gets bumpy. Everything gets expensive to maintain. So there's this frustrating gap. If you need to travel about 800 kilometers, like Tokyo to Osaka or Beijing to Shanghai, you're stuck with 2 bad options. Option 1, train. Takes just long enough to be annoying. Option 2, plane. Sounds faster, but by the time you get to the airport, go through security, wait at the gate, board, taxi, fly, land, and get your bags, a 2-hour flight becomes 4 or 5 hours of your day. That's the problem Japan and China are trying to fix. They're not just building faster trains, they're trying to compete directly with airplanes. Their goal? Turn massive regions into single economic zones where you can live in one city and work in another hundreds of kilometers away as easily as taking a subway. But to beat a plane door to door, you can't use wheels anymore. That's where things get interesting. Magnets instead of wheels. So here's the basic idea behind these new trains. Instead of wheels, you use powerful magnets to lift the train off the track. No physical contact, 0 friction. Then you use magnetic fields to push and pull the train forward. It's called magnetic levitation, or maglev for short. Because there are no wheels touching anything, the ride is incredibly smooth, and you can go way faster. But getting rid of wheel friction reveals a new enemy, air. At 500 or 600 kilometers per hour, air acts like a solid wall. The drag, resistance, gets insane. Pushing through that air requires massive amounts of energy. So engineers have 2 choices. Option A, keep the air, but build a train so powerful it can brute force its way through. That's Japan's approach. Option B, don't fight the air, get rid of it. Put the train in a vacuum tube. That's China's approach. Both are insanely ambitious. Both are happening right now. Let me break them down. Japan's 500 kilometers per hour tunnel train. Japan is building something called the Chuo Shinkansen. It's a maglev line connecting Tokyo, Nagoya, and eventually Osaka. The goal, 500 kilometers per hour. Commercial service, regular passengers. To put that in perspective, the trip from Tokyo to Nagoya currently takes about 2 hours. With the new train, 40 minutes. Tokyo to Osaka, down from 2.5 hours to just over an hour. The technology here is purely Japanese. They use something called superconducting magnets. Here's how it works. The magnets on the train are cooled with liquid helium to minus 269 degrees Celsius. That's almost absolute zero, colder than outer space. At that temperature, electricity flows with 0 resistance. This creates incredibly powerful magnetic fields that lift the train a full 10 centimeters, about 4 inches, off the track. Why so high? Earthquakes. Japan sits on the ring of fire. Earthquakes happen all the time. If the gap was only a few millimeters, the train could crash during a tremor. But 10 centimeters gives it a safety buffer. The train stays stable even if the ground moves. Sounds perfect, right? Except it's insanely expensive. In early 2024, they revealed the project had ballooned to over 11 trillion yen. That's roughly 72 billion US dollars. Why so much? Because the train almost never sees the sun. About 86% of the route is inside tunnels. To go 500 kilometers per hour, you can't have tight turns. You need straight lines, so they're blasting straight through mountains, including the southern Alps. They're digging tunnels up to 1,400 meters deep under the mountains. Going underground solves problems. No noise, no weather delays, better earthquake protection, but it created a massive political fight. For years, the project was stuck because local farmers were terrified that tunneling under the mountains would drain their water supply. They grow tea, and without water, their farms die. This dispute alone pushed the opening date from 2027 way into the 2030s. So why keep going with a project that's years late and billions over budget? Because for Japan, it's not just about speed, it's about survival. Japan is terrified of a massive earthquake hitting the main island. If that happens, the existing bullet train line could be destroyed, cutting the country's economic arteries. This new line is buried so deep underground, it's designed to survive the catastrophe that knocks out everything else. Its backup, insurance, a lifeline. China's 1,000 km/h vacuum train. While Japan focuses on making their 500 km/h train a reality, China is aiming at something way more extreme. China has been operating the Shanghai maglev since 2004. It hits 431 km/h every single day. They've got 20 years of real-world data that nobody else has. But they reached a conclusion. Fighting air at those speeds is inefficient. Pushing a train past 600 km/h in open air uses way too much electricity and creates shock waves that damage the track. So a Chinese aerospace company called CASIC decided to bring space technology down to Earth. This is the T-Flight project. The concept: build a sealed tube around the track and pump the air out. Lower the pressure to about 10% of normal atmosphere. If you do that, drag virtually disappears. Suddenly, 1,000 km/h isn't physically impossible. It's efficient. Inside the tube, the train glides on magnets with almost nothing to slow it down. This isn't just theory anymore. In early 2024, at a test facility, a CASIC prototype hit 623 km/h in a low vacuum tube test. They want a full-scale demo soon, with dreams of a commercial line that could make trains from Beijing to Shanghai faster than jets. But let's be real, the engineering challenges here are terrifying. You have to maintain a near vacuum over thousands of kilometers. What happens if a seal breaks? What if there's an emergency and passengers are trapped in a low-pressure tube? How do you evacuate people? Japan is battling geology. China is battling the difficulty of maintaining a space-like environment on Earth. Who's winning? So who's actually winning this race? If we look at operational reality, Japan is ahead. They have tunnels. They're digging stations under Tokyo right now. They hit 603 km/h in manned tests. They're solving the boring, difficult problems of making this a real business. China, on the other hand, leads in ambition. They're pushing physics. They're building hardware for a vacuum tube future that Western tech billionaires only tweeted about. The end game for Japan: kill domestic air travel. Once this line opens, flying between Tokyo and Osaka will make zero sense. China's vision is even bigger. If they can make the vacuum train safe, they could disrupt not just domestic travel, but the entire global aviation industry. There's also a commercial angle. Japan desperately wanted to sell this technology to the US for a line between Washington, D.C. and New York, but that project stalled due to cost and lack of government support. China views their maglev tech as a future flagship for their Belt and Road Initiative. If they can make it work, it becomes the ultimate symbol of Chinese technological superiority to export to the world. What happened to everyone else? Remember Hyperloop? A few years ago, startups in the US and Europe promised us pods and tubes. Elon Musk tweeted about it. Everyone got excited. Fast forward to today, and Hyperloop projects have mostly collapsed. Massive costs, regulatory hurdles, land rights, all killed those projects. Even Germany, which invented the maglev tech used in Shanghai, gave up on building a line at home. Europe decided to stick with standard high-speed rail, focusing on connecting existing networks rather than building incompatible new ones. Japan and China are the last ones standing because they have three things. Number one, huge populations that justify the investment. Number two, central governments willing to fund 50-year projects. Number three, deep national pride in engineering. In much of the world, maglev is still an impressive demo at an expo, not something anyone actually commutes on. What it means for us. So here's where we are as of January 2026. Two giants, two very different paths. Japan is carving a 500 km/h artery under its mountains. Expensive, late, but real. China is building test tubes for a 1,000 km/h train that barely touches air. Ambitious, risky, but potentially game-changing. Without this race, we probably wouldn't be seeing either of these. Competition is literally speeding up the future. They're redefining what distance means. They're proving that the future doesn't have to look like the past, and they're leaving the rest of the world in the dust. Final thoughts. So here's my question for you. If you could only pick one for your own country, which would you choose? Option 1, a reliable 500 km/h maglev train that you could ride this decade. Tested, proven, expensive, but safe. Option 2, a 1,000 km/h vacuum train that might replace planes forever. Risky, unproven, but revolutionary if it works. Drop your answer in the comments. I'm genuinely curious what people think. And if you found this as fascinating as I did, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the mega projects shaping our future. Thanks for watching. See you next time.